Yeah, I won't. Big guy. All right, we're live. So what's up, guys? So we got another episode of Happy Hour with BoostRodeo Live. And for this session, we wanted to have a guest to switch it up a little bit. So we have Trevor, who's the guy who runs StateLine Drift. So today we're going to be talking about drifting and some of their upcoming events. So we're pretty stoked about that. So welcome, Trevor.
What's up, guys?
Well, we're glad to have you on.
Hey, Trevor. Looking forward to next week, man. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good time.
And so why don't let's just start with how did StateLine Drift start? I know it's been around a long time, a lot longer than I've been coming to the events. So if you just want to give people a little bit of backstory of kind of how the shenanigans got going.
Yeah, so back in 2010, I just happened to be over at StateLine Speedway with a couple buddies of mine that I don't think have been in the drift scene for a while now, but we were at like a Wednesday night race, and for like the past year, a bunch of people on the internet, back in the forum days. So this is, man, we're almost a decade old. That's kind of weird to think about. But a bunch of people on the forums kept making comments about why we didn't have drifting here, why drifting stopped going through Auto Sports Northwest, and why we didn't have any outlets for drifting. And I was a couple beers deep, and I was like, well, let's just go talk to the track owner and see what he says. And so right after the racing stopped, we crossed the track and we found the track manager, which I can't remember his name right now, but he's been removed, obviously, a few owners now. And I said, hey, we have a bunch of people that want to go drifting. Can we go drifting? And he's like, yep. Why don't you show up next week with a couple people on like a Wednesday, and we'll see what happens. So I put a bunch of random people together, and that was kind of the start of StateLine Drift. And obviously from there, we've had our constant ups and downs, but 2011 was the start date of StateLine Drift, and we've seen everything that we possibly could see in the local drift scene. So we've been doing our best.
That's awesome. It's funny.
It's killer to hear that grassroots just growing it from nothing over a couple beers. That's awesome. Kind of rings true here, huh, Ryan?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it's funny how some of the coolest shit always comes out of when you're just having beers for some reason.
Yeah, so the crazy thing is I kind of grew up in drifting a little bit different than a lot of other people. My brother and I did his first SR swap back in 2003, and at that time there was only maybe half a dozen people that knew about drifting. And I was still in high school. I was a freshman in high school when I learned about it. My brother showed me like all these option videos and Drift Tengoku and all this stuff. And so I kind of grew up in a weird era compared to what drifting is now in the United States. Back then, you couldn't get parts from Japan. You'd have to go to these exclusive shops to even find some of these parts. But it really sparked my interest back then. And I actually remember sitting in my parents' basement sophomore year in high school, and somebody had gotten their hands on the now famous Drift Bible with Kaiichi Tsuchiya, and we all sat in my parents' basement, just a bunch of high school kids watching this non-English version Drift Bible. No idea what the hell they were saying, but we thought it was the coolest thing ever, and that definitely solidified drifting for me.
That's awesome. We were actually in one of the like rare super parts groups that's got a bunch of old guys. We're just talking about that, the old catalog days where you'd literally go into a hole in the wall shop. They'd flop like the top secret catalog or whatever down on the counter, and you'd sit there and page through it and order your parts. And then like 6 weeks later, they'd finally show up at the shop and you had to go pick them up.
Yep.
It's just so different than what we have today with
so
Amazon.
The import scene in general, growing up in SoCal was huge. and we would have, we were more into drag racing than drift racing, but we would have 2, 3, 500 cars show up and street race all night long back before Fast and Furious. And you would go to these little hole in the wall shops that you didn't even know how they stayed in business because they just looked like a chop shop with one bay behind a retail store. And they were getting stuff from everywhere for anybody. It was crazy.
So, Trevor, tell us about some of the car. I know you're a 240 guy. I know you've had a lot of builds. You've sold a lot of builds. And so which one, what was the first one? I know you had way back, wasn't it? You started with like a 240 Coupe?
So my very first 240 is a 240 that's no longer around, but a lot of the parts are. It was a yellow hatch, S13 hatch. And I found an SR completely disassembled in somebody's basement and bought that thing for like $400, which obviously is like unheard of now. I got that thing pretty much mostly put together. And then after that, it's kind of a fog on from there until I'd say 2009. 2009 is kind of when I re-kicked my love for drifting, picked up just a completely stock SR Coupe. And that was my red SR Coupe. I don't know if people remember that car or not, but that's kind of where I, did coilovers and different wheels and went from 15s to 16s to 17s and angle mods and just tried to keep it as clean and street as I could. And then
I found some old ones of a gold one. So where did that one fit in the mix?
Okay, so so I picked up. Okay. So the funny thing about this photo is this is the very first. We didn't call it Matsuri, but this was the first 2-day festival that I'd ever put on in 2011 at the end of the year. And it's the first time that we actually got permission to drift the banks of StateLine Speedway. And before that, they thought that we would tear the track up, and so we could only drift the infield. But so this gold coupe actually was my brother's when I had my yellow hatch, and we were going to build these same painted brother S13s. He never followed through, so I picked this car up from him. Oh man, a long time ago, and that was kind of like my introduction to trying to build like a race car. Like I caged it, I did angle mods, I did everything, a switch panel, I did a custom chassis harness. It was crazy. I love seeing these old photos. Oh man,
I went and dug up a few.
Yeah, it went through a couple iterations. I used that for the majority of 2011. Myself and one of the other StateLine Drift hosts, which is Trey Taylor, a great friend of mine. We ran Evergreen Grassroots Series in 2011. It was a 4-round series. We'd never driven Evergreen before, and we're like, hey, we've been drifting for a couple of years, let's try it. And so that car was kind of my way of trying to get into the competition side of things. And it saw different styles. It never got to the point that I wanted it to, but I ended up 4th or 5th out of like 70 drivers for grassroots in my first year in competition. So the car did okay for being the most one-eyed, drunken, put together car I've ever built in my entire life.
That's awesome, because Evergreen's a big course too, depending on how they set it up. But that's a lot to walk into when you're used to StateLine and little stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely.
That's exactly what I was going to ask.
It's like, how do you transfer from the StateLine course over to like what's coming up this weekend?
It's a good question. I kind of grew up at SCR My parents have been road racing since before I was born. So I was kind of accustomed already to big racetracks and fast speed, and I try to drive every single car that somebody is willing to put me behind. Sometimes it ends up good, sometimes it ends up bad, as some people know. But um, it is hard. It's hard to go from a small kind of secure place like StateLine that has in the infield that has lots of runaway. It has lots of, it's slow. There's lots of time for braking and making adjustments to a spot that we see 120 plus miles an hour from some of the cars that go out there. So it's different, but it's just one of those things where you kind of got to fly by the seat of your pants. I guess I never really thought about what the transition took. It's always just something where somebody puts something in front of you and tells you you're either going to do it or you're not.
That's rad.
That's rad.
That's awesome. I grew up a lot on motorcycles and stuff like that before getting into the car scene. And so, I would ride track days with friends that were really good on track, and I was terrible on, supercross, motocross style track. But go in the dunes and I'll run fifth gear wide open with anybody, So it was a really different transition for me. But I feel like when you jump in the car and the truck, you just do what you do and you make it up as you go. You get into something too hard, you try and hope not to touch the wall or go off in the dirt, and hope it sticks.
It's definitely a little scary. I mean, for this next weekend, I'm like, okay, like if this is going to be your first drift event, then I'll do everything I can in my power to help this. But luckily I've been in that position. I think a lot of people have been in that position where you put yourself into something that's brand new. And even at this day and age, no matter how old you are, I'm 31 now, and I'm still finding things, new hobbies that I'm picking up that I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. But you hope that there's somebody there to kind of give you a line to follow. And it was like when I picked up dirt bikes for the first time in my life when I was like 27 years old, and my buddy had like a backyard supercross track, and he was like, yeah, dude, like, let's hit some jumps. And I'm like, no, but okay, let's do this. And having somebody to kind of follow through the jumps and stuff made it not as scary. But I can see how showing up to a track and maybe not having anybody there that's done it before or to give you that guidance, that mentorship, would make it super scary. So I hope we can make it accommodating. Obviously do my best.
The community that you've created, though, is really, really welcoming. Everywhere you walk in the pits, everybody's talking, showing whatever they want. This is what we did here. This is what we did there. So I think you've done a really good job with that, and letting the first timers and newbies come out and just send it for a little bit and learn and fail and learn and fail, until they figure it out.
You having audio issues, Trevor?
Yeah, my wife called me and I told her I was doing this, and now all of a sudden you guys got super quiet and I don't know how to turn you up.
Yeah, I was going to say.
The echo's probably not as bad though.
No, the echo actually stopped.
Okay,
so go figure. Yeah, I was going to say that's one of the coolest things I've seen in StateLine Drift in the couple of years that I've been coming to events and stuff, is just the fact that you get those brand new people. Like, I remember the last StateLine Drift event, there was that chick who had that brand new FC, and like I don't think she'd ever driven it on a track before. It was brand new. And so she went out there with some of the seasoned guys, and they just had her doing donuts in the middle, get comfortable. Now switch it the other way and do a figure eight. Now go back this way, just to learn the car, where you're never going to get that at a bigger drift event. Like, it would be so incredibly intimidating for someone like that to show up.
It's funny. I used to do my best to try to remember every single person that has come out to StateLine Drift. Obviously, there's been a lot. But I think you're talking about Cheyenne Red FC convertible.
Yep.
And which is funny because I still talk to her. I actually ended up buying that FC, which was
Did you?
dumb of me. But yeah, it's hard. Drifting there's a lot of groups in drifting. I think everybody can agree with that. You have a lot of people that are just in it for the fun of it, and they don't care. They don't care about the style of it. They don't care about how they're drifting, where they're drifting, and what kind of car they're drifting. And then you get a lot of people that maybe have more of like an elitist mindset to them. And I understand both sides of it. But the number one thing that I've always that we've tried to do running StateLine Drift is to never make somebody feel like that we're an exclusive club. Like you can't come here and you can't drift and you can't drift that car and your car can't look a certain way. It's
right.
It's been hard because no matter what you try and do, you can't please everybody, which I think is probably one of the biggest things in any sort of motorsports is you can't make everybody happy, but we can at least try to make the new people come in and feel okay about what they're doing and not that they're spending. Is your house burning down?
There goes Josh.
My wife's cooking. Sorry.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
my wife.
Allison. Nice. So I think I actually found a picture.
It's got to be a little bit frustrating as a promoter to try to include everybody, and then you still can't make everybody happy. You know, I'm that kind of person where I just want everybody to have fun and get along all the time, and it's impossible.
Yeah, if there's one thing I think my wife would say about me is that I'm a people pleaser, and I've always tried to do my best to make sure that everybody is happy. And it gets very stressful knowing that I can't do it, or when somebody is mad about something that I'm doing, or they don't think that what I'm doing is right. It keeps me up at night because I try to figure out ways of how I can try to resolve the situation. But like you said, it's just, you know, you do your best, and I think as we get older, we figure out that that's all we can do is we can give our best. And I'm not 25 anymore. You know, I can't stay up all night trying to figure out how to make every single person happy, but I do my best to make the majority happy.
Yep. So is this the original red one that I found?
No. So that car lasted all about 2 months.
It's not a good run.
I bought that car because I wanted to take the gold car, the champagne car that we saw earlier. I wanted to take that further. I wanted to build a Pro-Am car so that I could do the big bank at Evergreen. So I picked up this hatch, threw everything from my gold car in it besides the cage, so angle, coilovers, diff, SR, everything like that. I drove the last round of Grassroots Evergreen in it, and then I drove, I believe, the following weekend.
Is this the same hatch then after you did all that, or is this a different one?
No, different hatch. Yeah.
Okay, so you got a few.
Yeah. So the red hatch before the drift event at StateLine the weekend after the last Grassroots event, I actually ended up blowing through one of my front braided steel lines, lost all my brake fluid in the beginning of the day, but I still wanted to go drifting. And I did a dumb maneuver. I jumped in with some friends, and somebody spun in front of me really far away, and I did everything I could to try to come to a stop, and not having any brakes can't really do too much. And I slammed pretty hard into the nose of him on the passenger side of that red hatch, and I moved the B pillar about 3 inches into the passenger seat. So that car didn't last very long.
This one looks like it had a rough day too, though.
Yeah. So, man, I feel like all my cars have the dumbest stories. I don't remember. I think I had some cars in between that red hatch and this black hatch, but this black hatch was the culmination of like 2 years of me. I was working in North Dakota. I was putting every dollar I could into it. I got sponsors on board. It was like my Pro-Am car. I had a buddy building it. I was helping every single time that I was home. It had the craziest knuckle setup on it. for the most part, it had an insane cage on the inside. Everything was painted. I think that was the first test day that I did, and this is actually maybe the same weekend that I finally ran 5.8s. But this was actually a full LS1 car. I purchased a full LS1 with a T56. I got sponsored by Field Racing, who did the original LS1 to S13 kit. I got sponsored by them. It had Field Racing everything. The thing was pretty nuts. But I never finished and I never fired up the LS1 because I suck at wiring. And I if there's one moment in time that I wish I could go back, it's that. Now that I've learned a little bit more, I realize that there's maybe 6 wires that need hooked up, and that thing could have started, and I could have been. My life would probably be in a different position. I feel like, at least in drifting. But I ended up selling the LS1. I sold the entire mount kit. I bought this SR from an old friend, Cody Hall, who used to be a StateLine regular, and I realized that I absolutely love SRs, and SRs can do everything you want to do in life.
Remember that, Ryan.
Yeah, sounding like me with Toyotas.
Yeah, it's just you do something enough, and you realize less power and more power. It doesn't matter. If you're having fun, you can make your platform and your engine work. And I don't think I've ever made over 300 horsepower on an SR before. And I don't think I ever will in the future, because for me and for what I do and my style, I won't ever need it. I think SRs are amazing little engines.
And so right now you're working on another SR Coupe, right? That's the current one, is the red one?
Yep. Yeah, so the red Coupe, yeah, there it is. She looks good, I think. Besides,
it does. It looks like you found a super clean one, and you're about to put her into a wall.
No walls, man. Don't put that juju on me.
You're not right, Ryan. You're not right.
As long as it's the ass end, it's all right.
Yeah. Besides the paint, the thing is pretty clean. So that, again, this car is like, that's a whole nother story that could go on forever. But that car pretty much sat in a garage for the better part of 17 years with an SR in it that my brother originally put in back in 2005. Well, I guess, what is that, 15 years? Yeah. So 15 years. And it sat in a garage that entire time without running, until I randomly got a phone call from somebody I hadn't talked to in over a decade asking if I wanted to buy it. And I'm like, of course.
Yeah, this one definitely looks good. And you've got
to remember that story coming out.
Oh, do you? I think you're going to have this one ready at Matsuri, right?
Something on...
Yeah, I posted something, kind of a short story about it on Instagram, I think, or Facebook, something like that. That just like a little snippet of how I came about it and stuff. But the car is all ready to go. I just did my first burnout in it, which felt pretty good, so I was pretty stoked on that. And I'm actually, my buddy is texting me right now because I told him that I wanted him to tow it over to Highland, which is what we're getting ready for Highland Drift this weekend.
Yep.
A good friend of mine, Gavin Lavoie, which I'm sure you guys probably seen his name around. Mm-hmm. He finally put a 350Z together, and I was trying to get this car over there, but with the way that my leg is and the way my doctor told me it probably wouldn't be the best idea, so I'm not going to push it. So I think Matsuri will probably be the first time that I drive it. I don't think that I'll drive it Saturday and Sunday. I'll probably just drive it on Friday before everybody shows up, so I can get a little track time for myself. But Matsuri is so busy and there's so much stuff going on. It's not feasible for me to go drive and have fun with everybody.
Yeah, that's a bummer, but yeah, it's crazy once everybody shows up. I'm gonna test.
Yeah, it's it's an insane time, and I think this should be a really good weekend. I don't know if we'll see the same driver count because Canada still has their borders closed, which is a bummer. But there's a bunch of new people coming out to this that have never been to Matsuri before, so it's going to be pretty crazy. But we're having, I keep saying I'm kind of solo on this lately, but I don't know if we're going to be having a car show happen this year because the person who was going to run it is not in the position to do it. So if anybody that ends up watching this, or if Ryan or Josh, if you guys know anybody that wants to run a car show, let me know. I'll pay them.
So okay, let's back up and just say, so the Independent Matsuri is going to be at Spokane County Raceway. It's on the 4th of July.
Yep.
And it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right?
Friday's rolling, Saturday's Sunday. Yep.
Yeah, and which is pretty normal. So they are allowing spectators, because that was one thing I saw some mixed things, is they were saying, oh, there weren't going to be spectators. Okay, that's what I was checking on to let people know, because I had a couple of people ask me, and I know some of my friends they're working pits for people. I think Josh is one of those people. He's going out with Joe. So are spectators allowed? Is there like a limit cap, or is it really just people who are kind of close to the drivers coming out?
So there's a couple things that are working good for us. Spokane County still owns Spokane County Raceway. Therefore, Spokane County is a park, which means that Spokane County parks don't have any limit on how many people can show up.
Okay.
On top of that, if everybody that comes in is a crew member, that's where the spectator comes in. Pretty much anybody who enters is a crew member or a driver. There's no spectators, and that's kind of the gray area around it. I don't think that we'll have any issue, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Okay. So how does that work if a car show does happen? I guess would be my follow-up.
So if a car show happens, anybody that shows up in a car is technically a participant of Matsuri. If they decide not to drive their car on the track, AKA a car show car, that's up to them. But they're still considered a participant. So again, kind of this weird gray area. And these are all things that are being told to me by SCR. So if any health department people are listening, this isn't my doing.
Ryan and I were kind of bummed that we're not going to be as involved as Ryan, I know, has been in the past. Of course, the last couple I've had to work weekends for different reasons. So I try to sneak over and hang out for what I can. But, Ryan's 4th of July plans, I think, are set in stone for about the next 20 years. So you'll not catch him on a 4th of July event. So I'm going to try to come out with Joe for a little while. Probably won't bring anything fun or exciting or cool unless you beg me to, but it'll probably be the wife's car and as many crew members as we can fit into it. So we're really looking forward to it. I was pumped about the car show. I might put some feelers out and see if anybody wants to step up. We took the Raider last weekend up to the Mohror cruise, and that was a huge, huge turnout. I was blown away by the number of people that came. Riverside Cruisers started promoting it a couple days before, and it just blew up. So that was a lot of fun. It's really nice to see the car scene coming together, through all of this.
If you do happen to find anybody that's kind of willing to do like a car show, just let them know that I would much rather have a car meet rather than a car show. Car show kind of puts the stigma of awards and all this other stuff happening. Even if we had 40 or 50 cars that just decided to park in a gravel parking lot that look nice, that's all I care about. It's something to kind of get this this festival kind of feeling for any of the spectators that just want to come around and want to look at cars for a little bit. Because I understand the viewing for drifting at SCR isn't quite the best. There really isn't many spots to view, so giving them some other opportunity to go do something is kind of where I'm at with things as far as a car meet, other than a car show.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we'll definitely put the feelers out. And like I said, unfortunately, I won't be able to be there, which I'm really bummed about, but Josh will be. So we'll see what we can turn up for you.
What's your
family stuff? We're camping with the kids and everything. So I'll be in the doghouse forever if I try and bail on that.
So the same camping that you could do out at SCR with your kids that could go on ride-alongs?
Pretty much.
We just don't have trees or a lake or a river or, campfires.
Yeah.
His camping is not what you expect when you hear camping.
Oh, no, we're borrowing the in-laws trailer for this one. Yeah, and we'll be on the boat.
So, when I got a message for the link, I was actually driving down from Sandpoint because I was picking up a motorhome for this weekend and next weekend because I don't sleep in tents. I'm an old man.
Oh, we just lost him.
Oh, we lost him.
Trevor's gone.
I totally agree with Trevor on that. My wife has turned glamping into a lifestyle.
Oh, that was weird. That was weird.
Well, we got you back.
Now you guys are going to get your echo.
Yeah, the echo came with you. Your wife calling was like magic.
Yeah.
Well, we usually try to keep these somewhat short. We've been about a half hour a day. Started a little late. But is there anything else you want to talk about for Matsuri or tell people to show up or anything?
I think the biggest thing that I want to say is that first and foremost, I appreciate anybody that comes out to these events. They take a lot of work, but yeah. So Independence Matsuri is happening July 4th and 5th. It's $20 per person, and that's good for the whole weekend. That's good for ride-alongs. That's good for camping. If you want to come out there and be there for 5 minutes, it costs $20. But I don't want to jinx myself. I have said that this is going to be the last one because I have been told that this is the last one. But I think COVID works in weird ways, and I think we'll know by maybe the end of July or August if we'll be doing another one next year. So if the track is open, we'll be doing another one. Only time will tell. But other than that, thank you guys for having me on. This has been fun. This is awesome.
Yeah, we were stoked to have you on, and I know it's a huge amount of work, so I just want to say thank you for putting these on because I haven't even actually driven, I don't have a drift car built right now, and I want to build one just because I've been coming to these events for a couple of years and in other people's cars that they've let me jump in. And I know the last one you kind of ducked out because it is such an enormous amount of work. You just got burnt out. So thanks for doing another one because I did everything I could to help Bryce with Shindo, and even just sidelining it, it was a massive amount of work. I was in awe of what you guys do over and over again for these. So I'm super stoked that you're doing another one. Fingers crossed there's another one coming, and maybe we'll have a car ready for it by that time. So.
Yeah, you guys should definitely throw something together. It doesn't take much, although I think any hobby is kind of an undertaking, especially if you already have money going out to other hobbies. It's kind of a hard thing just to jump into something new. But I hope that people see the kind of work that goes into these events. Obviously, Bryce kind of got a little glimpse and a hard punch of how hard sometimes these events are run, and sometimes dealing with the actual track managers and track owners, it can be very stressful and difficult. It is what it is. But I run these events purely for the drivers. I don't do them for myself. I don't do them for a profit. I do them so that other people can come out and have a place to come drive. Because without this, we haven't had anything at StateLine this year. Even though StateLine still wants drifting, drifting is kind of a hard thing out there, and SCR is a thing that can really only happen once a year. So like I said, I appreciate anybody that comes out and comes and hangs out, and especially when I hear people coming up to me and saying thank you. That means the most to me. I love hanging out with everybody and having a beer at the end of the night and laughing and talking about moments during the day and looking at cars. Like, that's what it's all about. I wanna feel like a kid every time I'm out of the track.
That's so awesome, Trevor, and it's really cool how you put it together and give everyone that outlet where it's a controlled environment and you can go and get up to those 110s, 120s if your car is capable. And I'll tell you, Ryan and I, you probably know our story about getting back into cars from being car guys when we were younger and then family guys, and now trying to juggle both. Coming to your guys' events is really what solidified the next project that we're going to dive into, right? Which we thought was going to be the little blue B210 until we looked underneath it and decided that was a bad idea. So it will be coming at some point once we get the platform figured out. We're too hung up on let's be unique. Let's not get caught up in a drift tax, but let's do something that will catch somebody's eye. And then looking at your SRs, I'm like, well, that looks easy enough. Why don't we just do that?
Yeah. I'm out there that people are finally starting to find out about that are super cheap without going into it too deep, but like a Ford Mustang, like a Fox body or a BMW that can be had for $1,500. There's some cheap stuff out there, and I hope people understand that. If there's one piece of advice that I could give to anybody, it's be patient. Even though there's a lot of cheap parts out there, you will hate it in the long run. Just take your time, build things to a standard that you want to hold yourself to, and keep pushing.
Go ahead.
We've been talking to one of my buddies, and back in the day, we used to quote unquote street drift Mark 7, 8.8 limited slip, 5.0 high output, but the thing weighed like 3,400 pounds. It was a tank. So just keep that in mind as we're looking. You may see something very much in that realm of the Mustang styling.
All right. Well, I think we're going to call it, but I really do appreciate you, Trevor, and we'll have to do this again sometime. And if another Matsuri does happen, please let us know how we can help, because we'd love to do whatever we can to help you put it on.
Yeah, let's as soon as I find out about something, I would love to link up with you guys. You guys have been around for a long time. I've been watching your stuff, obviously. So yeah, thank you again for having me on, and this is fun.
All right. Well,
all right, bud. We'll see you next weekend.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Cheers.
All right. Catch everybody else in the chat later too. Thanks for hanging out, guys. It was fun.